My name is Lee Moore, and this is the Chinese Literature Podcast. Some people tell me that they think the Chinese Literature Podcast is a joke. Today, I'm going to prove them right. Today's episode is about a joke that is making its rounds on Weibo. Now, some of y'all might be wondering, does a joke really count as Chinese literature? But jokes count. In my first class on Chinese literature at the University of Georgia, way back in 2004, we read a joke that was from the Tang Dynasty, I believe. The joke is that the emperor of all the animals sends out an edict saying that all animals that have tails are going to have their heads chopped off. And the frog comes rushing to ask his friend, the monkey, whether or not he will get executed, because when he was just a tadpole, he, Mr. Frog, had a tail. Okay, so that's the joke. But it's funny, kind of, from their perspective, because it's very revealing about the arbitrary nature of authority in Tang China, when the emperor has the ability to decide whether a whole class of people are going to get executed. And Tang emperors did have that power. People, and frogs too, have to carefully consider these kinds of minutiae in their lives. That speaks to not only the nature of Tang Dynasty governance, but I think this tadpole joke is also relevant today. We live in a world where autocracy is becoming increasingly powerful, and the tadpole joke may actually be more relevant today than when I first read it back in 2004. Today's joke comes not from the Tang Dynasty, but from Weibo, the Chinese microblogging service similar to the app formerly known as Twitter. I'm just going to read my translation of the joke here. I was traveling when my foot kicked a thing. I picked it up and took a look and realized it was a bronze lamp. I looked at the bronze lamp a bit more, and there was a place where there was a smudge, and I used a bit of force to give it a wipe. Suddenly, out floated a genie. The genie said that he could satisfy any wish I had. I said, "Is that so? Well, are you able to make what? As soon as the genie heard this, he rushed over and covered my mouth. Is that something that you can say? Okay, so that's the joke. Now, y'all might be asking, what is this about? And the Chinese here is just as confusing. I'm going to read the line in Chinese for those of y'all who know Chinese. 飘出来一个妖魔，说是能够满足我任何的愿望。我说，是吗？那能不能让那啥啥啥啥啥啥 And that sha is just what? Okay, so first off, it's impossible to say what this joke is really about, but it's pretty clear. It's almost 99% certain that it's about Xi Jinping. Censorship rules have become so tight that one is not able to discuss Xi Jinping in the public sphere at all. So discussing nothing has become a way to discuss Xi Jinping, even if it's only in the vaguest of terms. When I was last in China, I was told by an old friend that discussing these kinds of things was becoming so difficult that she would just stop the discussion on WeChat if it touched on anything political. I think we can see how far this has gone. Now, y'all might be asking, okay, Lee, you say this is about Xi Jinping, but how do we really know this has anything to do with Xi Jinping? Well, don't trust me. Trust the censors of China. This joke, when it appeared on Weibo, was quickly censored. The account was banned, and that's a pretty harsh punishment for something like this. So censors are obviously taking this very seriously. You don't have to just trust me and China's censors. Not only was this joke censored, but apparently Chinese users who did see it, and it did circulate some even after it was censored, these Chinese users understood what meant. At least they thought they did. One user commented, "Beware of foreign lamps." Okay, so this is clearly a joke on Xi Jinping's kind of xenophobic anti-foreigner campaign. Another said, "Reported. Don't think we don't know what you meant to say." Okay, so at the very least, it's clear that this user thought that he knew what he was talking about, and he didn't even have to mention it or couldn't mention it because it couldn't be said. Another user commenting on this joke said, "Ban the production of A4 paper. This is an allusion to the anti-COVID protest last November that relied on blank sheets of A4 8.5 by 11 paper as a way to communicate their message, as so many other things had been censored." And it echoes this joke in a way that not having a message has, in an increasingly authoritarian China, become a message in and of itself. We do not know who posted this. It's just a social media handle that indicates nothing about the user's true identity. But it is indicative of how tight the censorship regime has become. A recent biography of Xi Jinping that was written by two German journalists, a biography that I thought was dreadfully bad, but one that I found a couple of interesting things in is they said in the beginning that they were actually invited to discuss the book with some Confucius centers run by the Chinese government. Those invitations that they initially received were rescinded, and when they asked why, they were told that according to the new rules of China, you are not allowed to write a biography of Xi Jinping as if Xi Jinping were just a normal person. You can only write authorized biographies of him, and those have to come from the party. There is actually a content moderation document that was leaked in 2022 from a social media company, Xiaohongshu, the Little Red Book. That leaked document listed 564 variants of Xi Jinping's name that were supposed to be censored on their app. Even the three arrows of rising, falling, and rising in that sequence are now banned. Why? Because that has become a way to refer to Xi Jinping. Those are actually the tones of his name. Second tone, fourth tone, second tone. This speaks to how strict the censorship has become. Xi Jinping has become a sort of Voldemort figure, he who must not be named. Today's Chengyu, I don't know if it's technically a Chengyu because it has 5 characters, but of course some Chengyu do actually have 5 characters, even though 95% of them have just 4 characters. I don't know, should I call it a Chengyu? I'm not sure. I'll just call it an idiom. How about that? So today's idiom is 苛政猛于虎. That's Chinese for a tyrannical government is more frightening than a tiger. The idiom comes from a story in the Li Ji, the Book of Rites. Confucius and one of his disciples, Zilu, are passing the side of Mount Tai, China's most important mountain in terms of culture and history. On the side of Mount Tai, they come upon a widow who is mourning her whole family, all of who have been eaten and killed by tigers. The area that she is living in is infested with tigers. Confucius asks her why she is living in an area with a tiger problem. That seems like a bad idea. You might want to change that. And she says she is living there because this area with all the tigers is at least better than the place where she lived before, and she had to flee because that other place had a tyrannical government with high taxes. The conclusion that Confucius comes to is that a place with a tiger problem is a better place to live than a place with a tyrannical government. Okay, that is it for this episode. This joke was brought to my attention by the China Digital Times, a great outfit in Berkeley, California, that I actually interviewed for in 2021. They keep track of the Chinese internet and censorship on the Chinese internet. I'd highly recommend y'all check out both their Chinese and their English websites. I'll post links to both of those on my website, ChineseLiteraturePodcast.com. My translation is a bit different from theirs. That's fine. That's how translations work. Okay. If y'all like, or if you hate what I'm doing here with the Chinese Literature Podcast, send me an email and let me know. ChineseLiteraturePodcast@gmail.com. If y'all want to show support for the show, check out my Patreon page, Chinese Literature Podcast at patreon.com. I am Lee Moore, and until I am censored, this is the Chinese Literature Podcast.